name is Michael Albert, and I am the host of the podcast that's titled RevolutionZ. This is our 307th episode, and our guest this time is yet another good friend of mine, Bill Fletcher Jr. Bill has been an activist since his teen years. Upon graduating from college, he went to work as a welder in a shipyard, thereby entering the labor movement. Over the years, he has been active in workplace and community struggles as well as electoral campaigns. He has worked for several labor unions in addition to serving as a senior staff person in the National AFL-CIO. Bill is also a former president of Trans-Africa Forum, a senior scholar with the Institute for Policy Studies, and in the leadership of several other projects. And he is the co-author with Peter Agard of The Indispensable Ally, Black Workers and the Formation of the Congress of Industrial Organizations, 1934 to 1941. The co-author with Dr. Fernando Gapasan of Solidarity Divided, The Crisis in Organized Labor and a New Path Toward Social Justice. And the author of They're Bankrupting Us and 20 Other Myths About Unions. So, Bill, welcome back to Revolution Z.
Michael, it's very good to be on board.
It's now, I think for those listening, probably around 2 weeks to the U.S. presidential election. We're recording it, a little longer, maybe almost 3 weeks ahead of it. I know you have concerned yourself greatly with it, as have I, and so perhaps we should get right into that. Before addressing choices people might yet make, I wonder how you explain that the election is still as close as it is, which is also to say, why choices people make now are extremely important.
So I think what we're dealing with, and the reality is that there is a significant segment of the population that has embraced a semi-fascist, if not fascist, message. And one of the problems, Michael, is that many of us on the left have sought to explain away right-wing mass sentiment by laying it on the Democratic Party, on what the Democratic Party has done, has not done, etc. You hear it a lot in the labor movement, Michael, where people will say, if the Democrats hadn't been embracing neoliberalism, then people wouldn't be turning to the Republicans, which seems to me to be ahistorical and strange. Ahistorical in that we start to see white people leaving the Democratic Party in the 1960s in response to the 64 Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. This is way before neoliberalism. And then when you get to the 1980s, the real neoliberal offensive was driven by Republicans, not driven by Democrats. The Democrats were more late to the table on that, and particularly represented by Bill Clinton, who takes over in 92. So there's something very odd about that explanation. And I think that many people on the left have desperately tried to say, if it had not been for the Democrats' embrace of neoliberalism, we wouldn't be looking at this. And I think that that's a wrong analysis. I think that the Democratic Party's embrace of neoliberalism has been profoundly problematic and has contributed to a disengagement. But it doesn't explain the origins of this movement that we're looking at.
I don't disagree with that. I have a slightly different take that I wonder how you react to, which is, finding fault with the system, with the thing that we're all opposed to, and the things that we're all opposed to, is relatively easy, relatively comfortable, and people on the left, of course, are adept at it, which is not a bad thing. We should be adept at analyzing the causes and the roots of injustice and so on. But for me, the emergence of MAGA, and not alone the emergence of MAGA, also owes to 50 years of the left, not just of liberals and Republicans. The question becomes, for me, why have our efforts over such a long haul wound up in a place where significant numbers of working people are supporting a lunatic billionaire with fascist inclinations?
Mm-hmm.
Why haven't we done better than that on that?
Mm-hmm.
And we could spend this whole time, I suppose, talking about that, and maybe let's return to it. But because the election is so close, I also want to hear what you think about, well, the choice that people face in 3 weeks of
Mm-hmm.
what to do in the election. So, not so much the broader analysis, not because it's not important, it is, obviously, but the actual choice that people confront, because a lot of people are confronting that choice and saying, and I know you're encountering this as I am, they're saying, um, look, I'm so upset about Palestine. I'm so upset about the nature of the society. I'm so upset about, and then a long list of things. And I'm so upset about the fact that the Democrats aren't going to solve all those things that I don't want to reward Harris. I don't want to vote for Harris. I'm going to do something else. I'm going to vote for Stein, or I'm going to vote for whoever, or I'm not going to vote at all. And on the face of it, um, okay, why? Why does that matter? Does that upset you? And if so, why?
It definitely upsets me because I think that there's a failure to recognize that the election is not fundamentally between two individuals. It's basically us against Project 2025. And I think that people that try to avoid the Project 2025 question, including the Jill Steins, the Cornel Wests, are delusional, and that the threat that is represented by Project 2025 is actually unlike anything that we've faced in quite a long time. And so this idea that it doesn't matter is ridiculous. But the other part of it, which actually relates to something you were saying earlier, is that I would argue that we're in this mess in part because much of the left has refrained from constructing a strategy to win, a strategy for power. That we, if you look at the 1970s, profound sectarianism within the radical left, and as well as abstention from electoral work, and a lot of oppositional work, sometimes very good oppositional work, defending this, stopping that, etc. But very little from much of the left that was really seeking to construct a strategy to win. So we got so used to being on the defensive. And the right, on the other hand, the people like the Richard Vigories and the Paul Weiriches, they were constructing a strategy to win. Now,
Yeah.
clearly, they have more resources than we do, but the oppressor always has more resources than the oppressed. So we can't leave the argument there. And so I think that yes, man, it really is really unsettling. And I guess the other thing about it is that what I'm hearing from people is often the politics of self-expression, the politics of outrage, but not the politics of winning. It's actually, Michael, truth be told, the politics of defeat. The people that are
Yeah.
saying what they're saying to you and me are basically saying, Michael, there's nothing we can do, so shit happens. And I'm prepared to live with that, right? Except they actually aren't prepared to live with that because they're not understanding the profound challenges that we'll have under another Trump administration.
Um, Obviously, I agree very much with the politics of defeat as compared to the politics of trying to win. And it is sort of nauseating that the right wing understands this better than the left in many respects. But I want to go back because I'm sure people would feel this. I don't, but people would feel this. They might say to you, and I wonder how you'd answer. They might say to you, but Bill, I agree with you on the importance of a strategy to win. And that's what's wrong with voting for Harris, or even for voting against Trump, or even for voting against Project 2025. It's a defensive strategy, they would say. And what we need to do instead is to start engaging to win. We ought to start engaging with an eye on how does this thing unfold in a manner that actually changes the system.
Good question.
I
So
mean,
I would
that's
say,
the way they would ask the
yeah,
question, I
yeah,
think.
yeah, certainly. People will say that. And most of the time, I'd say they're actually quite disingenuous
Yeah.
because most of the people that are articulating this aren't doing a damn thing on off years, right? So if you look at the Jill Steins or the Cornel West, are they building something at the base? The answer is no. Are they building local political parties that really have a mass base? The answer is no. So we come every 4 years, and it's the same lunatic practice of every 4 years we talk about how bad the Democrats are, but little is done in between. And I'm tired of hearing people say to me, well, Bill, you say this every 4 years. That's right, because you nutcases aren't doing anything in the other 3 years. So don't put it on me. See, the thing is that the Democrats are who they are. They are an alliance. That's part of the strategic problem, Michael, that many of our friends on the left don't recognize the Democratic Party is not a political party. It is an alliance. The right wing, people like the Vigories and Wyriches, they understood this about the party system. And that's why I find it really fascinating studying what they did. These are guys that came out of the Goldwater campaign, were disgusted with the Republican Party, and they chose to make an alliance in 1968 with Richard Nixon, a guy that they despised. But they understood the value of the alliance in terms of what they could potentially gain out of a Nixon administration while they still did their independent work. I would say that our practice, as articulated by groups like the Working Families Party and a lot of organizations around the country, New Virginia Majority, et cetera, is that you've got to be walking on two legs. This is an inside outside thing. But many of our friends on the left who are basically saying, it doesn't matter, are underestimating repression, and B, during the other 3 years, really aren't doing very much outside of maybe, you know, posting on Facebook, X, Instagram, and and shaking their hands. Let me give you one more example, then I'll shut up. So I have been really concerned when I've watched over the last several years these right wingers show up at school board meetings, demanding the books be removed, and they're there and they're intimidating these school boards and school committees. So where are our friends?
Exactly.
These people on the left that are saying, no, something's got to be done. Where are they? I know where they are, Michael. They are sending text messages, they're tweeting, they're posting on Facebook, and they're shaking their hands and talking about how horrible the situation is and somebody needs to do something. But they themselves are not doing anything to match what the right is doing. I'm tired of hearing this.
Yeah, I sometimes say the right is playing chess and the left isn't even playing checkers.
That's right.
Um, and I don't like saying it, um, but there's an element of truth to it. Um, uh, But let me give you another reaction that I think would come not from me, but
Right.
from others. And in this case, I don't know how you pronounce her name. Is it is the K silent in Sawant's name? Do you know?
Yeah, it's yeah, Schwant.
Shwama Salant?
Yeah, it's
So,
oh God, I'm blanking on it. Swan. Uh, anyway, I know what you're talking about.
anyway,
The
what I'm
right
talking
from
about is
Seattle.
the person who was on the city council in Seattle
Seattle, correct.
and who, for 10, 12 years, and who represented one of the most successful candidates with a left perspective in the country, I think, if not the most, other than, say, well, they would contest this, but other than, say, somebody like Sanders or the Squad and so on, but certainly incredibly effective. She's been on the right side of issue after issue. You don't have to like every commitment she has or every view she has, but she's significant and accomplished and worthy of
Shama
respect,
Sawant.
I think.
Right.
Yeah,
Shama
and
Sawant.
worthy of
Right.
respect, I think. But um, just recently, she went to Michigan to campaign for Jill Stein uh, on a stage with Stein, um, and she was forthright, and I suppose that's admirable too. And she said, "Look, we can't win this election. We're not going to win this election. But there is something very important we can do, and we should be clear about what we can do and what we should do. We can defeat Harris. We can not stop Trump, but stop Harris. And in that way, and she would say in response to this issue of strategy, in that way, she would say, I assume, and she did say, we can undercut and even destroy the Democratic Party, which is the first step to doing anything worthwhile and successful in the United States. So, um, I hate to keep hitting you with things that I know are not going to be,
No.
are going to just anger you. I mean, it angers me. What's your reaction to that?
So Sawant is her last name, and
Yeah,
I would say, first of all, I think that you were very generous in
I try
your
to be.
compliments of her. Um, I would say that she has been rabidly sectarian for a very long time. And what's interesting about her, which says to me how disingenuous she is that she will not support Democrats, no matter whether they're left wingers or not, for elections, but she will accept, in fact, demand that Democrats support her. So my view, Michael, is that if you really think Democrats are that bad, why would you want their support? Why would you insist on it? Why wouldn't you just tell them to go to hell? So that to me demonstrates that there's a little, let's say, let's call it an ethical problem on her part, right?
Well,
Um,
let me fire back for her. I don't
mhm.
agree with her again, but let me fire back for her. Bill, come on, I don't understand. I am a socialist. I am representing things we believe in. Of course, I want Democrats to vote for me. I want everybody to vote for me. Um, but they are representing things that we reject corporate power,
No,
et
but
cetera, et
why would
cetera.
you want them to vote for you? Because these are the people that could contaminate your purism. These are the people that could interfere with your agenda. Why don't you tell them to stand back? You see, the problem is her line for a Trotskyist is ironic because it's basically third period Stalinism, right? The idea of the social democrats as social fascists. I mean, that's basically her politics. And the politics that said in 1928 that the Social Democrats were more dangerous than the Nazis. And that what the communists needed to do was obliterate the Social Democrats, and then we'd all be off to utopia. It's the
Yeah.
same ridiculous politics. And so her stance in Michigan is not at all surprising because it's a sort of apocalyptic vision of the left that basically the only thing standing in the way between us and the great future are the Democrats. And that when we obliterate the Democrats, we can just go forward. I sometimes describe it as the surfer's view of socialism. It's the idea that you paddle out on your surfboard and you wait for that great wave of the masses, and then you get on that wave, and that wave will bring us into power. Hallelujah, right? And it's ridiculous. It has nothing to do with politics. Has nothing to do with Marxism. But there are people that believe that. So what she's doing is not only destructive, it is completely ignoring the actual situation we are in. And this is the thing about, I would say to her, I mean, she's a Trotskyist, which means that she's supposed to appreciate Lenin. And one of the things that Lenin talked about, and you can look at it even in his work, Left Wing Communism and Infantile Disorder, is that there are certain moments when the radical left is nowhere near the possibilities of winning power. And in those situations, you have to make tactical decisions. So she doesn't get it. There's no point in arguing with her. Um, I was once at a gathering. I was speaking at a gathering in Seattle, and when the question and answer period came up, she stepped forward. Of course, had no question, but was there basically to give another speech. That level of arrogance
Wait, you mean from the
is
audience?
from the audience.
Yeah. Okay.
From the audience. That's why I'm saying I think that you are overappreciating her contributions. Sure, she's had a good
Well,
stand on certain things, but we have to understand that there are a lot of people that might have a good stand on things, but are really very destructive when you see their role in the broader world.
I obviously didn't have the proximity to her or the understand or the awareness of her that you do, by a long shot. But I still think we're back to the question. November 5th arrives. Uh, Joe, Sally, whoever is confronted with the question of what to do. What are the options? Vote Stein, vote West, vote somebody else. I think there are some other third party candidates. Um, don't vote, or vote Harris. In particular, in swing states where the small number of votes could sway the election and yield Trump as president again. And they would, I guess, say, yes, but that small number of votes could also be the final. It's hard for me to, the final nail in the coffin of the Democrats, as if that was true.
Right.
And won't make much difference anyway, because there's not that much difference between what Trump would do and what Harris would do. Um,
But
and
you
so
see,
they opt for
that's
one
the
of those
problem.
things that other than vote for Harris to stop Trump.
Yeah, but
Um,
see, the problem is that there is a difference.
of
Project
course, this is
2025 is the difference. The Inflation Reduction Act is the difference. Court appointments is the difference. The Supreme Court is the difference. The NLRB is the difference. The FLRA is the difference. Abortion is the difference. So those that say that there is no difference, again, it's delusional. Now,
But
that
what's the
doesn't mean,
delusion? Wait. Obviously it's wrong, or I would agree it's wrong, right? But what causes it? These are not horrible people. We're talking about people who are going to, are going to vote and who are outraged at Palestine, et cetera, et cetera. What causes them to say there is no difference, despite the fact that that is ludicrous?
Because, like flat worlders, they want to believe that the earth is shaped differently than their imagination drives them. That there are people that are very nice people that believe all kinds of very strange things. And they do it because it reinforces sort of their view of the world and what makes them comfortable. If you basically conclude that there is no difference between the Harris and Trump, then that relieves you of a lot of responsibility, Michael. You can basically just throw up your hands and just smoke dope, vote however you want. It won't make any difference. And you don't have to do anything. See, for those of us that are saying that we need to back Harris, there's a great obligation on us because what we have to make sure is that not only that she gets elected, but we do what we didn't do as a group when Obama got elected. That we actually keep pushing, that we are building the organization, that in fact we do what the Vigories and the Wyriches did in the late 60s, early 70s, building independent organizations, building up our base and pushing forward. So there is a lot of obligation on us. For those that say that it makes no difference, like Sawant, you basically just go back to building your own sect and hoping, which I would guess, because she's not stupid,
No.
hoping that the repression will not be bad enough to lock you up. But when it's like interesting when you see what Trump was talking about the other day about using the military, right? He is quite serious about this. Although many of our friends on the left and also many Trump supporters really don't take him seriously.
Yeah.
They think that it's bluster. And that's part of the problem also, that people, much like with Hitler, think that it's all about rhetoric, that nothing really that bad will be done. So all of these are contributing factors, Michael.
Don't disagree at all. Again, and that last has an implication. It says among Trump's voters, there are a great many, I think probably a considerable majority, who are not, wedded to fascism, who are not even wedded to, let's call it extreme racism. I'm not so sure about misogyny, but probably not even wedded to extreme misogyny, but could be reached.
Mm-hmm.
And the left approach to that is, who cares? I don't want to talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
They're deplorable, in the words of not a leftist, but a liberal Democrat. Um, and and it's not it's not our task to communicate with people we disagree with, which is incredible and goes back to this question of winning or not winning as compared to politics of defeatism. And just one last thing about that, which I find sort of ironic also. I have nothing much good to say about Harris other than that she's there in the way of Project 2025 and Trump and
Right.
so on. But I have noticed one thing that is striking, which, at least as far as I can tell, and as far as reports have suggested, Harris is sending campaign workers into rural areas to knock on doors and talk to people. I'm not sure that the left would do that, right? But that's because Harris is thinking. I imagine, maybe I'm giving her too much credit. I don't know, but she's thinking not only of winning the election, but of after the election, diffusing uh, elements of MAGA and producing the possibility of pursuing whatever she wants to pursue. And of course, it's our job to make sure pressure causes her to pursue better than worse things. Um, I'm wondering how you feel about that. Uh,
Yeah. Well, there's two things there. Working backwards, there are forces on the left that are doing rural work. There's
yeah,
a group in the Northwest called the Rural Organizing Project that's undertaking that, and there are others. But I think that your general point there is correct. Um, but I actually want to come to I want to speak in favor of the notion of deplorables.
of what? I'm
Um,
sorry.
of deplorables.
Oh,
You talked about Hillary Clinton's reference, right?
yeah.
And I think that here again, there's much of the left that does not want to admit that there are a lot of very bad people out there. See, Hillary's comment was, and I'm not a defender of hers, but her comment was misconstrued by many people on the left. She didn't say all of Trump's people were deplorables at all. Her point was that there was a sizable part of his base that is really bad and are people that are completely comfortable with misogyny, with making fun of people with disabilities, who are the people that are embracing this notion that Haitians are eating cats and dogs and ducks, right? So I think that what we have to do is look very carefully at that base. And we have to make a distinction, I'd say, between the zombies and the humans.
The
That there
zombies and the
are humans,
hmm,
humans,
yeah.
right? Um, that the zombies are people who cannot be won back to humanity. They have lost their humanity. They've lost their sense of empathy. They're gone. We should ignore them. They are not coming back. It's the people that are conflicted, sincerely conflicted. I don't mean the people that are BSing us about, oh, I don't know, I haven't heard enough about Harris's point of view, blah, 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 blah. Well, it's like, wait a minute now. You've heard, unless you are completely illiterate computer wise, you can look Harris up if you want more information. But one thing you do know is about January 6th. And that should actually settle the question. So you have to look at people that are actually conflicted and distinguish them from the people who are not. And there are many of us on the left that actually want to believe there's only a small number of very bad people out there. You know, there's the Trumps, there's Musk, there's people like that. But that all of these Trump people, they're just confused. And then what they'll do, what some of our friends on the left will do, is that they'll turn their attention and say the Democratic Party should be doing more to convince them. And it's like, whoa, let's stop for a second. Let's look at January 6th. Let's compare that with the Inflation Reduction Act. Let's talk about pulling the country out of an economic collapse. Let's talk about judge appointments, right? I mean, so let's not act like nothing has been done in the last 4 years. Now, maybe, Biden and his administration haven't talked enough about what they were doing. And maybe we on the left haven't talked enough about some of this. But let's not act like none of this is happening. And that level of insincerity from some of our friends on the left is really a problem here. So I think that when Hillary talked about deplorables, I was surprised at some of the responses. Because when you look at these Trump rallies and you see Trump making fun of disabled people and saying the most ridiculous things about Haitians, and people are applauding, you damn right these people are deplorable, right? Unless they came there completely losing their mind and thinking that they were at some comedy routine, they are deplorable. And they are not people that we should be spending any amount of time trying to win over. We need to spend our time on the majority of people in this country who have not lost their minds.
Here, I think we disagree some. First place in the discussion. Not that there are a subset of people who are lost, agree, but that the the way to proceed successfully at defusing and then altering the orientation of Trump voters, let's call it, is enhanced um, by using language and whatever accompanies it that is incredibly hostile to them. Now, I don't know. If it would work, I'd be all for it. But I don't think it works. I think what it does is it backs them up and causes them to feel even more so that Trump's on their side and everybody else hates them and hates not just what the most extreme things or even the extreme things that Trump is saying, but hates their very existence as working people. I think what they heard Clinton saying, and I'm not at all sure it wasn't exactly what Clinton was saying, was you're a bunch of dumb fuckers and, you know, screw you. And that has the impact. It has a dysfunctional impact, I think. If I thought telling them, you know, look, you're out of your fucking minds, would cause them to think twice as compared to causing them to back up and defend the position even more, okay, fine. Then tactically, it'd be a sensible thing to do, I guess. But I don't see that. I really don't, Bill.
But
And
Michael, it was one statement that Clinton made. It wasn't her. It wasn't like her address before the
I,
Democratic convention. It was
I
one
think it's
statement,
yeah,
right?
but I think
And
it's her whole tone and her manner
but
and
no,
the
let's
way
talk
she
about
carries
Trump's
herself.
tone. See, the
All
reason
right,
I
terrible. I
embrace
agree with you.
no, it's
That's
not just terrible. It's not just terrible. That's my
I
point.
didn't say it's
When
terrible.
this
He's
bastard is talking about Haitians, right? The way he's doing it, and people are embracing it, you damn right they're deplorable. I don't want to hear this about, oh, they're misunderstood. Oh man, life is really rough for them.
but that's not
Hell
what
with
I'm
that, Mike.
saying. But
I'm saying
wait a
don't
minute, Bill. That's
we
not what I
can't
said.
we cannot if people these people that were so upset about Clinton, right? What are they saying? What were they saying when he was making fun of disabled people? When they're saying they're
I
laughing at
think the
this,
same.
what are we supposed to say? Oh, they're just misunderstood. We just need to
No.
reach out to them. There's a lesson
Wait,
from
wait,
union
wait, wait,
organizing.
wait,
The
wait.
lesson from
But
union organizing is that when you go into a non-union place, you look at the workers in terms of ones, twos, threes, and fours. The fours are the anti-union people. They're people you're not going to be able to win over. You ignore them. I'm saying, Michael, I'm not into denouncing them. I don't give a damn about them, right? I'm saying I am not paying attention to them. The people that I know that are anti-union, the people that I know that are consolidated Trumpers, that's fine. Let them
okay,
go off, as an
let me ask
uncle
the
of mine
question
would have said.
differently then. Let me ask the question differently. He's going to
Mhm.
get roughly. We don't know exactly, of course, but Trump's going to get roughly half the voting. Those who vote their votes. He's going to get roughly half the votes, right? Okay, so how do you determine which of that 50% of the population to try to communicate with and which to not try to communicate with? And to not only not try to communicate with, but what I'm suggesting is to to become to be so angered by as to attack in a manner that may cause the rest of the 50% to become more entrenched in the wrong conceptions that they have. And in the it's like, okay, let me give you a completely different example. Somebody goes to Cuba a long time ago, comes back and is critical, and the left lambastes the person, right? Or somebody, and the person doesn't all of a sudden reconsider some of it, but they become more aggressive about it. You know what I'm saying? As
Mhm.
compared to trying to communicate with the person, and maybe the person comes around.
I
There
think
was
it's a.
a
I don't think the
there's what?
analogy works. See, the thing is that what I'm saying is something different. I'm saying that I'm not going to spend any time with them.
I didn't ask you to.
Not
I'm not
right.
saying okay.
And but most people see the thing is that what bothered me about what happened around Clinton is that it was one line in a speech, all right, or when she was asked a question, and it was one line. Okay. Now I don't know anybody that is spending their time blasting Trump supporters as being whatever. I'm saying that what has happened, however, is that in blasting Trump, many of his supporters become defensive. I have seen
Sure.
this, right?
Sure.
And they basically say we are being disrespectful, right?
Yeah, sure.
And so the problem is that when we try to nuance this, then but when Trump goes on and is as offensive and misogynistic, etc., and his supporters say nothing, see that to me is a test. That's part of a test,
It's horrible. We're not disagreeing that that's bad. Of course, it's bad. It's horrible.
right?
But the roots of it are consequential, and you can't just raid off half the population and say, for example, that I'm on a path to try and change the society, and I don't need that 50%. That's not the case. We do, right? It's over half of women. In the election he won, he had over 50% of women. Well, we're not going to just raid off over 50% of women. So you're saying, or you might say, yeah, but there's a subset of women in there who are gone. They're so far down a rabbit hole, or they so
And that's what I
believe
was
what they're
saying.
saying, right? That we can't reach them. Okay, but then there comes the question: how do you deal in such a way that you um, ignore them, if you will, but you reach the rest, or you try to reach the rest? There's a
By
tendency
organizing.
to not even try.
No, I don't think that that's true. I don't know anyone that's not trying. In fact, the part of the problem is that there's a lot of people that are trying a little bit too hard and spending a lot of time trying to convince Trumpsters to come to our side of the force. I think it's about basic organizing. It's also about message, about a number of things. I think that the basic organizing is that you talk to people, you listen to what they have to say, and then you make a cold assessment, right? And if, like when you're doing union organizing, you discover that somebody is really backward, right? You leave them alone. Now they may down the road change their mind, and that's fine. And God hopes that God help
Yeah,
hopefully God intervenes there, right? But in the meantime, you leave them alone and you
I'm not
concentrate
contesting
on
that.
right,
You do have to apportion your energies and your time, and you
right.
do that intelligently.
But
I
that's my
just don't
point
disagree.
about elections. That there will be people within Trump's electorate, and that's what I was saying from the beginning, that are probably confused, right? And there are people that may have voted for Obama in the past and now are voting for Trump, right? They may be all over the place, and that's fine. those are people that you try to identify and work with,
Okay,
right?
but then
And
we
a
agree.
lot of that is going to probably end up being underground. And I'm using that term loosely. There will be entire communities, and I drove through some this past weekend in Oregon, that are Trump territory. And a lot of the work is not going to be able to be done very openly because people will face all kinds of intimidation and retaliation.
Right.
We'll have to figure out how to identify these folks, right?
Let me give you another example that maybe a little bit closer to this. I was in Venezuela talking to organizers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about basically what they do, what they orient themselves to doing. And they were talking about how they try and work with the local committees and with the assemblies and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And in every case, it was working with ones that were Chavista. This is long.
Right,
This is well before Chavez died, right?
right,
And
right,
so in every case, they were going to ones that were pro Chavez. And
right.
there's nothing wrong with doing that. But I asked, well, what happens when you go to neighborhoods or communities or even campus groups that don't agree with you already? Uh,
Right.
and they said, we don't. And I was floored. I said, wait, you don't go where the opposition is? You don't go to try and reach people who don't agree with you yet? And they said, no, it's a waste of time. Now, I'm not saying you would do that, but you can see how it's an extreme version of what you're suggesting. It's an extreme version of saying there's a set of people who we can communicate with effectively, and there's another set of people gone. Well, that other set of people who were gone became very, very consequential in causing the internal dynamics of Venezuela to not be what Chavez, let's say, would have liked. And I'm saying something similar. Um, we may have a difference about percentages or something. I don't think we know very well, but um, it does. I mean, what of the person who says, the organizer says to the person, Trump's gonna, what's the word? Hey, normalize the Justice Department and use it to go after people. And this person says back, what are you talking about? The Justice Department is being used to go after Trump. Now, he really
Mm-hmm.
believes that. He thinks he knows it looks like that because it does look like that on the surface, right? And so he buys that. Well, that you're calling that confusion. Fine, I'll call that confusion also, but it's confusion that can be addressed. And if he says, Trump is going to fight for the working people and he's going to fight for me, he's with us, that can be addressed. If the person says, women should be in the home and subservient and says that blacks are subhuman, that's a different person. I agree. All right. And I agree with you. Maybe sometime down the road they'll have a revelation, but it's probably not worth our time to spend any time on them or to worry much about them. But I think it's mostly the other. I think it's mostly people they're on a team Trump. And it's insane, but it's not, it's I even this might even irritate a little more. I was thinking about, okay, the cats and dogs stuff, the stuff about that Trump says.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking to myself, okay, what he's saying is insane. He knows it's insane. He's not stupid. He's not as dumb as everybody makes believe. He knows it's stupid. Vance knows it's stupid. They know it's not true. So why are they saying it? Um, and of course, one explanation is, well, it resonates with racism. It resonates with that part of the constituency. Um, but I think there's another explanation too. which is that it resonates with the feeling people have that their way of living, their sense of community, may be under siege by a influx of a large number of people who have a different way of living and a different set of holidays and beliefs and so on. And they don't necessarily have to be racist toward that other group to feel like that other group is threatening something that they want to hang on to. Now, I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying the behavior is good, nothing like that. But it is really different than the sector of that group who you want to say, okay, we shouldn't waste much time on these rabid racists. I agree. But I'm not sure what percentage of Trump's vote is them. I don't think people voted for Obama and then voted for Trump because they suddenly became, rabidly racist. That just doesn't resonate. It doesn't make sense to me. I think there are other factors at work, and those other factors could be addressed. Of course, none of this bears much
So,
upon voting on November 5th and being willing to vote for Harris to stop Trump. Doesn't really, that's a
so,
trivial issue that ought to be decided by every leftist to be simple and easy to to act on. But
so
this
let's go
other
back
one
to
is hard. I
Venezuela for a
agree
second.
with you. Hmm?
I
What?
want to go back to the example about Venezuela. And I would
Okay.
say that the decision to go into those villages, the question to me is whether it was a tactical or a strategic decision of not going in. So, in other words, if there are certain communities, like if I'm doing electoral work, I may make a tactical decision that because of limited resources, there's no
Sure.
point, right? That's different from saying that these folks are hopelessly lost. So the question is whether it was tactical or strategic. The second, so I would say that the way you uncover whether,
Let me just answer that one for a second. I don't think it was either.
Mhm.
Honestly, I think it was exactly what you were talking about earlier. One is comfortable to do. It's even fun to do. It has positive feedback all the time to do it. And the
Right?
other is hard to do, discomforting to do, etc. I think it was that.
If that's the case, then it was problematic,
Yeah.
right? But I would say that um, the issue of like assessment, voter assessment, happens through dialogue. So that these people you're talking about the cats and dogs, um, basically you're talking about revanchism. That's really what you're talking about. That you're talking about a segment of the population that believes that something is being taken from them and or has been taken from them. Now, the question of whether someone is prepared to move away from that is to me the decisive question. I have a relative who's a Trumpster. Very nice guy, very smart. And but there's absolutely no point in having a political discussion with him because as nice and as charming as he is, nothing, and I mean nothing I say will shake any part. 25 to 30% of the US electorate has regularly supported reactionary candidates. Those are the people that are zombies. They are not being won over, Michael. Now, that means that we have probably about 75% of the population that really
That
is
seems right.
legitimately competitive. That's where my optimism lies, right? That we need to be focused on those 75%. And so in our organizing, just like we were doing in the union organizing, you're going to talk to people. You're not going to talk at them. You're going to talk with
Sure.
people to really make an assessment. Where do they really stand? And is there anything that we can do or say that can convince them? There was a guy that years ago, I took my car in the shop. I had a Saturn. I took the car into the shop, and there was this very nice technician there, and we would always speak. And this was right after Al Gore's film came out, The Inconvenient Truth. And so he told me he had seen it. And he said, yeah, it was pretty good, but the situation isn't that bad. And I said, what do you mean it's not that bad? He said, no, it's not that bad. I said, well, no, what do you mean by that? He said, it can't be that bad. I said, well, actually, the situation is worse. Now, someone like that, I look at as potentially someone that could be won over, but he is fearful of all of the implications of the situation being as bad as Al Gore laid out. Now, it might be the case that we can win him over, or it might be the case that he is in a bubble and he really can't come out of that. But I won't know based on just one conversation. And that's where I look at it in terms of elections.
Yeah, there's the question of the reasoning that you're describing, right? And then there's the question of, okay, what are the facts of the situation?
Right.
The reasoning, I don't think we disagree about. That is to say, you don't randomly apportion your time in useless ways.
Right.
You instead try to apportion your time intelligently so that it will have a positive effect and positive consequences. There we agree, for sure. I'm not so sure about the assessment of where everybody is at. Is it 25% who are what you're calling zombies, or is it 12.5%? What is it? I don't
I'm just
know.
looking at voting
You know,
patterns.
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
But let me give you another example, which I don't think is so far, which may say something about the dynamics. On the one side, there's
Okay.
this rabbit hole dynamics. And we see those dynamics. You get more and more into this position and you defend the position and your identity becomes attached to the position. And pretty soon you're on Team Trump and et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
I often tell this story. I went to a campus, State College, Pennsylvania, a long time ago.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Mm-hmm.
where who was the coach of the football team? So you're going to know, and I can't remember his name.
Paterno.
Yeah, so Paterno is the coach of the football team. The football games on Saturdays have 60,000 people in the stadium. The town has a population of about 50,000. So basically, football is the life of the area on weekends. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm on that campus. I'm in a room. I was talking to about 400 people, and in that room, um, before the sort of proper discussion started, I asked how many people had been to a football game on the campus,
Mm-hmm.
and two or three hands went up, literally among 400 people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's a constituency on that campus that I could have asked that question to that wouldn't have had 80 to 90 to 95% raising their hands for having gone to a football game, except the left on the campus, right? So then on the way to the talk, I passed this sports bar. It was huge, and TVs all over the place, et cetera, et cetera. So the next question I asked was, "How many of you have gone into the sports bar
Mm-hmm.
ever?" And the answer was, uh, now they were laughing. It wasn't they were literally laughing at the thought of doing that, and I was shook up by this. You're trying to organize a left movement on your campus, and you're telling me that you don't want to talk to 90% of the campus. How does that make any
But I mean,
sense?
so the thing about what you were describing, I would agree that that has been a problem. I'm not disagreeing with that.
I
And
know.
I'm not suggesting that we don't go into hostile situations. What I'm talking about, though, is something different, Michael. I'm saying that we have to acknowledge that there's a large number of people in this country that are not redeemable. They will not. That we have to stop acting like there isn't a mass movement out there that is very dangerous. That it's not just
We don't
Trump,
disagree.
right? That's my point. And so when it comes to organizing, any organizer is inevitably going to go into a situation where there is some level of hostility, where there's pushback. And you have to make an assessment in those situations whether or not it makes sense to spend your time there or not. It's a tactical assessment. So I'm making
Yeah.
that distinction. That's all I want to be very clear on.
Yeah. And that's what I said. We sort of agree on the reasoning, and it's
Yeah,
not clear, where the reasoning cuts in. You could imagine somebody saying in that school situation the exact same thing and
yeah,
then saying, well, it makes no sense to spend my time, to spend any time, for any of us to spend any time trying to talk to, the quarterback of the football team. And if I went on the campus, the first person I would want to talk to on the campus is the quarterback of the football team if I could possibly get in there to do it.
yeah,
All right, so that's a kind of a difference. And um, I hope. I mean, you're right. There's an element of wishful thinking in it. I feel an element of wishful thinking in me that group isn't that unreachable group isn't too big.
yeah.
Um, I definitely feel that. I agree with you. All right, we're on for an hour, and I know you said earlier that you had to get off around then. So if that's the case, is there anything you want to say before we conclude?
No, just my thanks. I appreciate this. I appreciate the dialogue as always.
Yeah, I do too, um, it's a pleasure, even though our tempers got up a little bit. It's a pleasure to be in a situation where, in talking about the election and all the rest of it, um, I feel so positive toward and respectful toward the views of the person I'm talking with, as compared to, as too often is the case, feeling not that way toward the
I
views of
feel
the person I'm
exactly the
talking
same
to.
way, and my temper had nothing to do with you.
No, I
And so
understand
it's nothing
that.
personal. All
I
right,
understand that. I didn't take
good.
it that way. Okay, so all that said, this is Mike Albert signing off until next time for Revolution Z. And hopefully, before too long, we'll have Bill back again.